Spectacular indeed. Mickey, thank you for joining me. It feels like they gave you a hard time during the game, even though they drafted for late game scaling. So can you tell me about this?
I mean, yeah, it was a bit close, but we also felt we were really confident in our scaling as well. I feel like Ezreal, Echo, and Zed are all pretty strong late game. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of even in the late game department, but we had a lot of dragons. So we were kind of confident that if we just like keep getting dragons and just farm for items and like play on the power spikes of Ezreal, that we can probably win.
Better team in the end, I guess. But I'm wondering, what is your take on Origen mostly relying on late game scaling lately?
I mean, I think it's not bad. I think like usually in best of ones, it's important to have some late game insurance, because in best of ones, even if you screw up something early game, you can still fall back on having like some kind of scaling, which is a mistake that we do sometimes. We pick like early game champs and we lose early game. We like screw up a dive and then it's a bit over. So yeah.
Looking at the meta right now, I know there is so many things to ban when you're on red side, but you decided to let GP's Alpha's GP go through. So do you think it's not worth banning it, because he's been insane on the champion lately?
I mean, we felt like the 3 bans we did, with Gragas, Karthus, and Ornn, are probably more important for Origen. And we felt like we can play into GP with Zed. We're pretty confident in the matchup. So we didn't really have the need to ban it. So yeah.
Okay, and about the double exhaust, it's not the first time we see it. So talk me through this, and how is it the best choice, and which bot lane does it go well with?
Well, me and Rasmus, our caps, kind of experimented, and we came to the conclusion that exhaust is just a better heal and a better barrier. Okay. Because, well, if you have exhaust, then everyone does 40% less damage. So if you would heal that damage, then it would still be more than if you just exhaust them.
Nice, I'll keep that in mind next time I'm laning. Now, match of the week tomorrow, facing Fnatic. Describe Fnatic in 3 words for me.
Aggressive, coin flip, and good.
Okay, decent enough. Thank you, Mickey. I'll see you tomorrow. Good luck on match of the week. And to wrap up this day, let's send it to PGL with the fish show.
And welcome to the LEC post-game lobby, where Deficio does join us as Ender and
won, right?
Well, I'm very thankful that
Did you watch the game?
I'm thankful you have joined us despite the loss. But let's get like gut reactions. How do you feel when you look at the big picture and you know how the team did, especially for the first 25 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, first feelings, G2 are so annoyingly good. It's really frustrating when you actually feel like it was a great draft. First 25 minutes, we were up in gold, trading back and forth a lot. Yeah, we gave up the 2 first drakes, which is fine. And then you're like, okay, great combo. We're going to start winning some fights. And G2 just find like 10 million small openings all the time to like punish you in these fights. One guy missteps, then he's chunked to like half, and then he can't fight. And then you get really frustrated, you get really mad. But at the same time, it was a pretty good game.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt, the best game of the day. Competitive, entertaining, close. Like it felt like there was a lot of really good things going on. I'm going to ask you to break down a couple of replays. Something I felt were sort of the game-changing moments. We've got 2 back-to-back, starting with a mid-lane team fight. It ends up being a 1-for-1 trade. What are you thinking and feeling when you're watching, you know, how the team are playing these fights?
This was for the 3rd Drake, right?
That's correct.
I think it is, yeah. Where they have all the vision, so we have to like blind face check, and they have 2 guys trying to flank. Maybe this was actually the fight just before that, where Perks killed Nautilus, but like this trade is actually okay. It's a 1-for-1. Obviously, we had to blind face check, which happened like multiple times. And then this one, he interrupts the Zac, which is okay. And then we like very close together. Luckily, Xerxes here gets like a really good setup. And I actually think for a moment it's going to look pretty good, but then they are very slippery, and obviously Nuclear has to flash out, so he doesn't get a whole lot of damage off. And again, you're getting attacked from like a couple different angles, and it gets really like chaotic very quickly.
It's sort of the nature of the 2 team comps as well, right? Because I think you had a lot of like really good initiation ultimates to start off a fight, but they with a Lee Sin and an Ezreal and a Set are never going to be really grouped up on top of each other, so it's really hard to find that perfect fight because, frankly, you're never going to hit like a shockwave on more than 2 people.
Yeah, I mean, Echo as well. It's like, jump in, oh, we got him, oh, he goes back, right? So it gets really tricky to get them gathered like in a group, but that's not like what the comp was for. It wasn't like built as a wombo combo or anything. Like Oriana was a good blind pick there and had a fine matchup, and Zach obviously is a strong pick right now, even in just like a normal kind of skirmish, simple team fight. So it wasn't supposed to be a wombo combo, but obviously we never really got to win the fights we were supposed to.
The shoutcasters were saying that when you watch G2, whenever they have champions with mobility, they have like beautiful team fighting, and they just, you know, they dance around you. Before we went live, you were sitting on this chair and you were going, they're so good at team fight, like so good at fighting. When we watched this last clip, tell me what you're thinking about, and you know, this is really the final team fight just before the Drake. That basically sealed the deal for the game.
Yeah, let's see if I can remember this, actually. This point...
You guys start falling back towards the jungle, and then,
we get flanked by Echo here, right?
Yes.
So we have to run back in towards him to get out. And at this point, they are actually like pretty far out, but then they have obviously a lot of mobility, and because of Echo W, everyone has to kind of like split up for a moment. And then when you start regrouping, Zed comes in and he like basically destroys like 3 people instantly. And it doesn't feel like a team fight, even though it is, because you're looking at so many different sides. Like you look at the bottom, your top, and to the right, where they come from all these different sides. But again, like at this point with our comp, this is where we are supposed to be able to like at least go even, if not start winning the fights. And it gets like really tricky then when we lost the first couple of fights. And here, obviously, we just have to kind of like coin flip it forward.
And I mean, the whole point of this is that like Perks manages to get the TP, the flank, catches you guys off guard. Does this just boil down to a setup thing? You know, back when you used to shoutcast with us, you gave us the 12-step plan to pushing mid lane, and you know, it's like, where does the mistake lie?
It's hard to say at that point, because like in a perfect world, we can see all 5 when we start the fight, right? Nautilus and Zac can jump in together. You have a super strong front line then, and you can peel for Oriana and Aphelios, and like Oriana ult can actually be used super effectively because you're fighting like front to back. But they just never let you fight front to back. And when you then start losing a couple of Drakes and you have to like go down and contest them, you can't actually decide to say, wait a minute, we have no vision, we just recall to get our items. We can just give up this 1 Drake and then we can just like reset on the map instead. You have to go fight it because it's like 4th Drake or something.
Yeah.
And then around Drakes and Barons, then there are so many different angles to come from. So it gets tricky. I think overall though, pretty good game. So I'm kind of happy about that. I just want to get to BO5s against G2 because we didn't obviously have the best of luck in spring last year. And I just want to get there again.
Yeah.
You remember.
No, it was an interesting game because I do think it was a good game by you guys especially, but it felt very different to a lot of Origin games because I think oftentimes like you come in as like the clearly better team, right? And you have a draft that necessarily doesn't need to push the envelope, and you use your time to like play 3 lanes, spread out, soak up a lot of CS, and then you win in the team fights. This felt like a game where a lot of team fights were like being brought to you almost. Like it was a very scrappy game all around, or it wasn't necessarily like wait until we know we can win. It was like G2 are coming at us, we have to fight.
Right, I mean, so there was a lot of fighting for mid prio, obviously back and forth, and then side lanes would use their prio to then go towards mid and like set up flanks on their side, and they did that better than we did in this game. Also, especially with the Echo, who could like super push into the base later on. So they utilized that super well when we were fighting for mid prio to gain control over Dragon area or Baron, which obviously made it again harder. But I just think like there are a lot of good trades in the early game, back and forth. For like, you know, they get a kill top early with Lee Sin, who obviously gets the prio, and he forces Cersei to like get out of his jungle. Then we get a kill bot lane in 2v2, which was great. And like we start like trading very well, also turrets, and we got 2 heralds and they got 2 drakes, which is a perfectly fine trade to make. It was literally it just comes down to when we start getting to the fights, they were simply just better at playing those fights than we were today.
And it really feels like when you play against a team like G2, one mistake, one small moment just seals the deal, especially when the game is this close for like 25 minutes.
Yeah, pressure you a lot.
Let's quickly announce the key-up player of the game. It was Jankos with 87% of the vote. I mean, he had a fantastic performance. Hard to argue there. But what I would like to do is zoom out a little bit now, because I had no idea what to truly expect coming into this game.
Really, Trevor?
I knew that G2 was going to win.
It's going to be a close game, of course.
But I didn't know how G2 was going to win. And at the top of the show today in Ready Check, we were talking a little bit about Origen as a team, trying to understand them. I think Frostgurn had a point that said Origen, even though they're in the top 3 and they're tied for first, they're clearly third. So I want to talk about the team a little bit now and ask you what you think about some of the play style, some of the things you have to work on as we head towards the postseason.
Luckily, that is not my job right now. That is Andre and Jack, our 2 coaches, who's focusing a lot on that. But, based on second half results, we lost to Fnatic, we lost to G2. So obviously looking at that, we are, compared to those 2, like a small step behind, in my opinion. I'm okay saying that there is still a top 3. And we, right now, are slightly behind. But then we're also ahead of number 4 by like a decent step, in my opinion. We obviously have to prove that tomorrow against Misfits. But yeah, I think this game, we obviously want to, for us, as people talk about, the drafting is often built around strong team fighting and so on, which I think is good right now. It's my preferred style as well. So obviously, as Andre said when he was on here and he was having a casual, friendly conversation with you, there are obviously certain things that can be added to the playbook as well. But I actually think we also can do that if we just start changing up things. I just don't feel like it's necessary always to do that just to prove someone wrong, right? You play what's best and what's the highest chance of winning, especially in best of ones, when we have 7 teams literally winning almost every game against the bottom teams. You can't afford to drop a whole lot of games.
And give me a little bit of insight into some of the things that we say on broadcast when it comes to
Can
lack
I drink
of.
during this?
You may. You're welcome.
I don't remember the rules from.
When it comes to things like lack of creativity, or the example that we used in the pregame was if there was a textbook team that had a good game plan, good understanding, good expectations, Origen would sort of be that team.
Yeah, see, I think it's interesting because I feel like textbook isn't necessarily the right word for Origen. They've mastered 80% of the book, and then there's 20% that I don't think they've showed us just yet. And in particular, something I brought up a lot is when there is a side lane win condition, or win conditions maybe a little bit strong, but I've seen Alfarian and Camille, right? Where you can go into side lanes, you can create impact, much like we saw Perks on in the Echo in this game. There are these types of opportunities, which is sort of the crux of my argument, that I would like to see Origen use a little bit more, especially when we get into best of 5s where showing multiple styles is going to be strong.
I think we did that a lot in the starter split, obviously where Alfari was on some of these different super strong one-on-one champions as well. And he obviously played that super well, which is why he got the mid-split MVP as well from you guys. So
unofficially,
I call it official title. I take it as an official title. We have almost a fake trophy in our office now.
Oh yeah,
to mid-split MVP. We
you
take
have best caster all time in there too.
Yeah, that's obviously painted on the wall, not by me, someone else. No, but I think the lack of creativity, I think is very interesting because I actually feel in draft, we do bring out different things. It's not we just play the same 5 champs every game. And in this game, there was quite a lot of action in the early game as well. It's not always necessary to gamble on 50-50 plays in the early game if you don't have to, if you have stronger late game, right? And you're playing against a team who you should be beating in late game, as you highlighted earlier as well. So, and yeah, I know I see the narratives and so on. It's all good. It's all good. We'll take it. Remember, it was the narrative in spring when we walked into that semifinal against Fnatic. You remember that? Game 1, Blitzcrank Varus. Boom,
that was
boom,
a good
boom.
one. When do we see that again?
The thing is, we don't see it frequently enough to have faith in it, right? Because last week, the game against Rogue, where you guys pulled out the Renekton and absolutely smashed Xerxes on, was it the Gragas?
Forget the Renekton, it's Gragas. It's all about the Gragas.
But it was big talking points, right? And when you see the tempo of that game, when you see OG pull that out, I'm great. That gave me more hope for today. Then we have a slightly slower game. It ends up hinging on sort of one TP, one play, because it's so even.
Right.
It makes me have more questions than more faith.
I think it's a fair narrative. We are happy with a lot of things we do. We also know there are certain things we have to obviously get better at. But I think the narrative, I understand where it comes from, and we actually don't mind. We kind of laugh at it as well. and that's perfectly
It's
fine.
hard to deny, to be
It is.
fair.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
It's very important also to say, like, just because we say Origen is a slow team doesn't mean that they can't, like, do good things
Correct.
early in the game. Like,
Right.
you guys have really solid laners. When Xerxes is on a champion that can have an early game impact, I'm very pleased by it.
he got some
I
kills
don't-
on Zach today.
Okay, you guys got away with murder in the early game. Just while hiding
Hey,
in
he
the
got
bush,
some
landing the
kills.
Q.
Well, listen, I want to turn our attention to the standings because after today's results, SK, Vitality, and Schalke are now eliminated from playoffs contention.
Oh.
Rogue, Mad Lions, and XL are still fighting tooth and nail for the last spots. I'm going to pick you up on something. You playing Misfits tomorrow?
Yes.
You kind of hinted they might be the fourth best team. Where do they stack up versus Rogue in your mind?
I actually think it's really hard. I really struggle to judge Rogue because I feel like we are super good against them. Both games, camera's back by the way.
Thank you.
Both games we played against them this split were like pretty one-sided games in favor of us, and I know they're like good, but I don't know if they're like the number 4 team as people
Okay.
predicted in preseason. It does feel like when they lost like a Kiana mid lane as an example, where Larsen would use that to game prioritize and actually kind of play a bit like Perks did in this game, you know, push outside, then look for really good flanks and fights, and he would like catch people off. They use that super well, but that hasn't really been something he's been playing lately, and it makes them like fairly standard in a sense, where I'm not sure who is the big superstar suddenly on Rogue who can like take them into the top 3
What
right
about
now.
Misfits?
Misfits, also a hard team to kind of read. Well-oiled machine, actually, in a lot of ways. A lot of respect for their coaching staff. I think they came in really understanding their own comfort and not necessarily thinking too much about what is the exact meta and what do we have to worry about against the other teams. So being like, okay, this really works for us. You know, they had a lot of Rakan in the start. Denik was really good on Rakan. Obviously, Razork has been allowed to kind of just go ham in the early game. Even got to play Echo Jungle, and he was great on Gragas as well. So I think they just kind of understood from the start, we're not going to win by just trading like power picks left and right with everyone else. Like, what is actually super good for us? Razork strong early game, Denik on engage, and they use that obviously also to help Febiven quite a lot, who's had a great split. So I think Misfits have done well, and if I had to predict a 4th place team at the moment, I probably would pick them. Right now.
I think Misfits are super solid, and it's not just like individual players on the team like stepping up a whole ton. I think the teamwork, like they were one of the first teams I felt like really gelled together well when it came to like vision control around mid game or mid lane rather, jungle support synergy and how they're able to influence the rest of the map. Like all of these things they figured out very early on. I think it sort of skyrocketed them to get that early win streak.
Right, and I also think it's one of the beautiful things about building a roster. Like, there are so many elements that you look at and you try and predict. You can't always hit it right?
You can't
But-
predict chemistry.
Yeah, no one thought this team was going to be like. If you look at it, it was like so many
so
rookies.
You look at the
know?
names, right? There are a lot of question marks, but you know, Razork and Denik played together in Spain, so they obviously had built-in synergy from the start, which is super, super important, like jungle mid synergy. I think Febiven kind of came back with newfound motivation, and he gelled super well with Razork, which I don't know if that was like expected or planned on their side. Maybe they've been like playing a lot in
Maybe it's a
solo queue
happy
before.
accident. Maybe it's just like
I'm not
luck,
sure,
you
but
don't know.
if it was kind of like from a personality standpoint, if they had actually looked into that a lot and built it, focused on that, because I know they really wanted Dan to stay in the roster because he was a great teammate and made it very easy for everyone else to play the game. Like, they might have just kind of hit the jackpot there in terms of personalities that actually fit together, which is so underrated. Like, it might not make you the number 1 team, but it can definitely make you a playoff team.
How will tomorrow's game go before we move on to match of the week?
Us versus them, or?
Yes.
I think we're gonna win. I'm obviously gonna say that. I think we learned from our mistake when we played them last time. And yeah, I think also they've played a lot of games now, and there's a lot of footage to look at on their side. And I think we can use that to our advantage.
I'm very much looking forward to that game.
Very
as
PR answer, I know. but like,
I'm aware.
we're
I'm
gonna-
aware. Look, I knew what I was going to get from you.
It's
Look,
the exact
tomorrow
5 picture going.
we have got the battle of the 2 top teams, G2 and Fnatic, now that Origen are no longer tied with them. The winner gets sole possession of first place and
damn, we
setting the
lost that
stage
tiebreak now.
for the epic, heated rivalry, arguably the best rivalry in League of Legends. How's that game going to play out, and who you think's going to win?
Ooh, my initial prediction is G2.
Okay.
I think Fnatic's greatest strength is the fact they have 5 individually super good players, I don't necessarily look at Fnatic and see like a clear identity or big play style thing that you're like, whoa, they're so good at doing this one specific thing. I just think they have like 5 really good players who can all kind of pop off individually on different picks. Gives them big champ pools, obviously, because they have a lot of different things they can pull out based on trusting each other and having the skill to do it. But I think G2 actually matches that super well because they have like a super team on their side who is even more like gelled together. And the only, I guess, fear people look at is obviously bot lane, where they have shown some problems, like dying either in laning phase 1 time or 9 times, no one knows. I think as long as they don't actually have an issue there, I think G2 will win.
Yeah, I mean, I think my prediction is leaning G2's side at the moment. Fnatic definitely have a chance in this game. I thought, like, even in the last time these two teams faced off, like, it got out of control a little bit earlier on.
Yep.
But, like, I thought they had a chance, like, coming into that week as well. So what I think is probably G2's biggest strength coming into that, a part of just, like, having really solid players, is I think they are one of the few teams that can play side lane super, super well, especially with their mid laner. When I look at Nemesis, he plays a lot of these champions that doesn't necessarily go into a side lane to, like, push and create pressure, and like, needs support in order to be able to do so, whereas Perks can definitely do that. And you think about, like, G2 last year as well, where they had, like, top mid going to side creating a lot of pressure. Even if the game does get out of control against them, they have abilities to fight back.
Also, the last game they played, because I remember when we played G2 and they beat us in like, I think it was like 30 minutes or something, where they won early, but then they made like a bad play around Baron where we punished them, we got back, but then they still had like Infernal Soul and they beat us. I remember looking at the Fnatic game and thinking, okay, let's see how the early game looks here, because we struggled in the early game against G2 in the first game. Will Fnatic do the same? Then obviously G2 are just super good early. And they actually did. From what I remember, it was like super chaotic. It was a ton of kills, especially around bot lane. Hylissang dying quite a lot, and like G2 were just like getting further and further ahead and kind of ended up closing out the game pretty easily. I don't think it's going to be as one-sided tomorrow. I think Fnatic has definitely stepped it up. So I think it's going to be pretty close, but I guess slight edge to G2, actually more based on the fact they've played together now for a year and a half, even with the role swap.
I'm going to ask you one last question before we move on. Is G2 that much weaker than 2019 version of themselves? Or is Fnatic and OG that much stronger than the 2019 version of themselves? Because it feels a lot closer right now.
I think Fnatic and Origen are better right now than we were last year. I definitely think that is the case. And I think G2, I don't know if are they weaker? Like, they're slightly less explosive in a way because they don't have Caps who brings a very different flavor to mid lane. Where Perks could play like multiple styles, but he could play super hardcore for lane. He could also just play like fairly slow and like weak side, and then they wouldn't have to worry about bot lane. Where I think right now, if G2 are not helping their bot, there's a chance you can gank it and like actually get some sort of advantage. So I think that makes them slightly weaker, I guess, but I actually think they're really good.
The summary is basically different from 2019, but you know,
also it's spring split right now, and G2 took a long break after Worlds, so it's only natural if they actually start a little bit slower. But I think we have a really sick top 3. I want to keep putting Origen up there and say like I think we are playing very well, and I actually think we belong in the top 3, and I understand why you guys are saying it's a top 2 now. But we obviously want to show that as well.
I'm more willing to say top 3 after seeing today's game and being hopeful.
That was one good fight on our side, and it was a lot closer.
I've got great news for you too. Is if you win tomorrow, you're going to be tied in second no matter what.
Well,
so there you go.
There we go. Listen, let's take a look at the rest of the games. Fnatic and G2 are closing out the week before that. We've got 2 other top teams, Misfits and Origen, going head-to-head. Ender, final thoughts on which games jump out for you tomorrow?
Ooh, which games jump out? I mean, we've already talked about Misfits, OG, those at the bottom. Rogue Mad Lions is going to be a really important one for the playoffs race as well, with both those teams right about neck and neck. Possibility of dropping out of the playoffs race too.
Obviously, first game, they don't play for anything, I believe.
Correct.
But the next 4 are actually super insane tomorrow because XL, if they want to have a chance, they have to beat
Yes,
Vitality.
and I stand to be corrected on this, but I think it's 5th versus 4th, 3rd versus 2nd, 1st versus 1st as well. So literally we're going to split up the standings. Anyways, that is it for us. We don't have much more time. So if you want more League of Legends, LCS Academy Rush is coming up at 2 a.m. Central European Time, followed by our rebroadcast of the LEC. For now, it is time to call it a night. We'll be back tomorrow for some epic matchups. See you then, and thank you, Deficio.
Thank you for having me.
What about me, man?
You were here
I'm
too.
right here.